Yeah, all good over here.
All good over here.
Let's do it.
I think your background picture is one of my favorites so far. Even though it's not landscape. Um,
That always makes it more chaotic, doesn't it?
it's actually really gross. The more that I look at it, it makes me feel really
Yes, I
uncomfortable.
know. The more, yeah, there was like an empty like 3 liter milk bottle at least, a chocolate milk bottle.
Because
There's
of
a
the brown
microwave in the
cow.
corner next to the TV.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. There's an
Yeah,
inflatable palm tree underneath it as well.
and it's just shooting the shit, you know.
Oh, okay, yeah. Alrighty. So, welcome back to the Best Trader I Know podcast. I'm your host, Swiss, the least sophisticated financial participant out of Brotato Capital. Here today interviewing Matt. At the time of the recording, it is the 23rd of the 6th, 2025, so 23rd of June. Bitcoin is at 100K, having survived tariff disputes and currently a war between Iran and Israel. We are still trading at 100K per BTC after some very turbulent times in the altcoin markets. I've known Matt personally for a couple of years now through his work, which he does at Collective Shift. So it's great to have him on and have him spend some time with us answering some questions, diving into his background and why he made the terrible decision to join crypto. So, Matt, welcome. How are you?
Doing well, thanks, Swiss, and yeah, happy to share some insights and sort of steer people away from the crypto space, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. Fingers crossed, man. And I love how you just said you're doing good, as if I didn't string you along for 45 minutes while I tried to fix my audio as well. So,
That's over now, so it's all in the future. So that's why we're good.
yeah, yeah.
But yes, this sound hopefully will be super crisp.
Yeah, super crisp. And if you're listening, Stinky, appreciate your help here with fixing it if it's gone wrong. So, um, which is good. So, my first question I had for you was, how would you explain to someone that isn't into crypto why they should participate?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot over the years and had a lot of different questions. I normally where I land now, probably what 8 years or so doing this is meeting them where they are, or at least contextualizing it. So if it's someone who doesn't know much about finance or money, um, if they or they're not really super into tech or anything, um, it is very difficult. I normally just go back to the old reliable bit, like just explaining that Bitcoin is essentially like digital gold, just something that is scarce through all this code base that people figured out how to make it provably scarce. And even with that, what I see is a simplified sort of explanation. I still get the eyes glazing over often. So, I typically leave my explanations, I sort of end them at just explaining Bitcoin if they have any follow up questions about any of the other thousands of cryptocurrencies and all of that. Happy to entertain it. But these days, especially, like I have found myself, if someone asks like what I do for work, I just go straight to Bitcoin and typically just leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Did you find yourself when you're explaining it to people that are getting into it for the first time, were you relying on personal experience that you've had over those 8 years?
Yeah, I would often, because I've seen a lot over the time, I would, just I would often have a story like to tell them, or something to make crypto more relatable to what I think their certain circumstances were. And if it was someone wanting to get in purely to trade, or make quick profits, I'd be able to give them some like general tips and ways for them to avoid making mistakes. And I wouldn't even touch on things to do with like smart contracts and blockchain. I would just leave all that to the side. But if it was someone who's like more interested in the tech side of things, I draw on my experience over the years to sort of help them understand this crazy, wide-ranging space. But yeah, I think, I don't know, like about you, Swiss, as well. Like, have you found yourself? I've noticed certainly like a stigma being attached to crypto, like more so especially since FTX collapsed. And we got all of those headlines to do with Do Kwon and Terra, which even made it like to the big headlines in like the AFR, even here in Australia.
Yeah.
I found since then like there is this quite a like consistent stigma attached to crypto that it is punting and like essentially just like sports betting. So I often find myself just explaining Bitcoin and then keeping it at that.
Yeah. I think I think I agree. I think that a lot of the interfaces that I guess a first timer would interact with would definitely indicate that it's more geared towards transactional colors that are more similar to gambling. Whereas I
Mm,
think when they get caught, when they kind of get funneled into that direction, it's very easy for them to write it off. Even with Bitcoin, I think the underlying tone for what Bitcoin actually is gets missed in a lot of the subjective classifications that it's picked up over the years. So
mm,
I kind of find myself maybe not as good as probably what you do, where you meet them for where they are. I kind of have to repackage it in a way to help them understand that, like, there is really no simple way of understanding what this actually is, because like when they realize that the technology for Bitcoin hasn't really changed for the duration of its
mm,
existence, it's really hard to understand why someone wouldn't have bought it back then versus why they buy it now. And so
yeah.
it sort of like comes back to the idea that this whole space is kind of like an environment that humans have actually created for themselves. Um,
Yes.
and it's like an amalgamation of all of what humans are in this space. Um, and so it like I start talking like that, and then they kind of go, "Oh yeah, this is kind of all too much to me." And then I just kind of go to the
Yeah.
fact that like, well, Bitcoin's gone up a lot, and institutional investors like it now, so maybe you'll feel more comfortable purchasing it. But
It comes down to simple things like that, just like social
yeah,
proof that is like for decades and even longer, really centuries. Like it's just a quick way to make a decision. It's still like this. It just is applicable to explaining crypto.
100%. And it also ties back to sales as well. But like when you've been in crypto long enough, I definitely think that you kind of learn to like if it was so simple, it would be simple, but it's really not. And
Mm,
even the idea of just dollar cost averaging into BTC like
mm,
blindly scares me. Like that potential
mm.
sharp retrace to the downside, and you're just like you've just switched off for too long to realize what has actually occurred during that period of time. So, um, yeah, it's definitely a wild, turbulent space. And sometimes the best advice I give people is to just not bother. Um, if they're
Mm,
like trying to approach it with a framework that it needs to make sense. Like if they're trying to approach it from well, my Excel spreadsheet tells me that, this is where it
mm.
should be in terms of value. If it's not there in terms
Yeah.
of value, then the market's wrong. It's like, oh, I actually think that you might not want to be a part of this industry because,
Yeah.
you're kind of looking at it from the wrong lens. But if you're like, yeah, I'd love to make a bit of money, don't really mind losing it, it's like, okay, that's a little bit easier to manage because you're going to understand that there is a high probability that you're going to lose it. Or if you're extremely seasoned and hardened and you're constantly looking for like opportunities within crypto, different protocols, different thesis, different frameworks, whatever, really, then that's also a space for you as well because you kind of understand the risks with doing that over time. I also, to jump in, I realized that when I was looking at my questions, I had scrolled down the page and asked you like one bang in the middle, and
I suspected that. I suspected
not
that.
the ones
I like that you mixed it up there.
at the start. And I like scrolled up, and I'm like, oh my god, like that's just such a terrible way to start it. But
First
let
the audio, now the order of the questions.
yeah, don't let them know that you're just recording this on a Discord chat. There's just let them know that there's a big studio behind it. But let's start with the beginning because you said that you've been in crypto for 8 years.
Yeah.
You obviously would have started with an interest and then kind of ended up at Collective Shift. But how did it come around for you? How did you begin your interest in crypto?
Yeah, for me, my whole career has actually been in crypto, which feels crazy to say, but yeah, I came out of uni in in the Melbourne area. I went to Monash, and finished a business degree. So towards, yeah, as I was getting to the end of that, started to, think more deeply about what I was wanting to do as a career. I had the typical options of, going to like a big four, accounting firm or something else in the realm of economics. And I could see that trajectory like ahead of me, and was sorting, I don't know, was just starting to look elsewhere in terms of like, things I could do that weren't such a, I guess, really predictable path. And it was at that same time that I started to look at things like freelancing. And I really have always enjoyed like writing,
Yeah.
and that side of thing, like explaining things like through written form. So I was doing various writing jobs for different like accounting firms and, local businesses and whatnot. And it was around that time in, the second half of 2017 where just a lot more increasing amount of like crypto jobs kept popping up on like the freelance jobs boards.
Oh, really?
And at a similar time, it was, people were like telling me about, Bitcoin and crypto, which sure, like everyone, like I'd heard about it, throughout the 2010s, like decade, heard that Joe Rogan interview with like Andreas. That was probably the first time I remember hearing about Bitcoin like in depth. Um, and then there's all these jobs for different like ICO projects or even just crypto news sites that you've never heard of, that are long gone, that were just wanting to cover different ICO projects and all of that. I sort of just like was fascinated by like just the combination of backgrounds that something like crypto was attracting. And then I just went head first into taking on some jobs, and that was a good forcing function to, I guess, learn about the space as I was sort of getting paid. Well, getting paid for it. And then that led me down to the path of, working for various like crypto news sites, um, and then covering the industry, and then wanted to get more deeper into like the investment and analysis side of things, as time went on. So, that's how that path sort of, that's how that started. So it was around that time of the ICO era.
Yeah. And were you primarily researching the space, or did you ever put some skin in the game and start dabbling at that point?
Yeah, these conversations often come up. People sometimes might wonder, well, oh, he's worked in crypto for 8 years, so he must be doing something wrong. How is he not retired on an island by now? And that's partially, partially, I guess, to be honest, the first cycle essentially that I was involved in, I was largely absent from, even though I was living and breathing crypto. I was, well, I guess in hindsight, my belief is I was too risk averse or too, I guess, sensible for the stage of life that I was at, and such minimal risks that I did have attached to my life at that stage, where I didn't really go headfirst into investing in crypto. I had considered it at the time as making a massive investment in my career, like in crypto. So I didn't want to double down on it and actually invest a lot of dollars as well into crypto. So I definitely bought, a few different like altcoins and whatnot around that 2017 and early 2018 era,
Yeah.
when the market sort of topped, and I continued to buy like on the way down throughout 2018 and 19. But looking back, it was an extremely like small amount of dollars, and even though I did well in percentage terms, it really wasn't that much to move the needle. So if I had gone headfirst and actually backed my gut, or backed a lot of the actual research that I was doing and helping other people, make a lot of money based off of like some of the research I was doing, who knows where I would be these days. But that's really, I guess, answers your question there. So I was investing my career and putting all my working and living hours, a lot of it into crypto, but not so much my money to start off with.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, how did you, I guess, not extrapolate the possibility of it going higher, I guess? So, like, if you were researching a protocol in 2017 and they had this idea that they were going to replace the healthcare system, and you're like covering
Yeah.
it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is the argument that they're making. Here's why it like, because like you said originally, you break down like complex ideas, and that's what you enjoyed about writing, and simplifying it through your writing. How did you not get caught up in the excitement of what you were covering to then just like, I don't know, bet the house on it essentially?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, as I said, like I would definitely throw some money around and have a punt on different altcoins when I started. But yeah, not extrapolating out. I suppose that the reason why I didn't do that was, I guess, just a lack of deep understanding about even human psychology in a way, and just like investor psychology. I was very much just for the here and now when I was investing in different altcoins back then. And I don't know, I just didn't really get too caught up in it to the point where I was like, this is definitely going to change the future, which, a lot of those projects back then made it sound like. And yeah, I just had this mentality for better or worse that I was just investing like my whole living hours into this, that I didn't want to. I just, like, for better or worse, like, appreciated or thought that I really valued like this concept of diversification. So back then I was getting into stonks and whatnot with like my dollars, but investing my time and working hours into crypto, and I sort of made that correction by the time the next cycle came around. And I guess once I found out, and once I sort of knew that a lot of my research had been helping a lot of people make like massive amounts of money, I could tell that I was pretty decent at my fundamental analysis. And I guess by the time the next bull market came around, I was willing to back myself a lot more. So yeah, 2017, 2018, it was really just a lack of knowledge about the space. So I was sort of learning as I was going, and then the actual market analysis side of things started to go full time into that probably around 2019.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So, I have a couple of questions here. So, one of them is about, did you understand what a cycle was? Because you mentioned that you dollar cost averaged down in
Mm,
2018 and 2019. That only
mm.
makes sense to me if, like, the framework I have is like, yeah, good time to DCA because of how the cycles played out afterwards. And then I kind of think, how did he really know if there was going to be one afterwards?
Yeah,
So how did you like manage
yeah.
that period of time? Did you kind of believe that, I guess, from a price perspective, there were going to be tops and bottoms?
Yeah, but definitely throughout 2018, it was more just like, holy shit, what's happening? Like, we're just down only. And I, reflecting on it, didn't really, there still probably wasn't this sense of like this 4-year cycle is going to play out again. Like back then, we probably only had a sample size of one, maybe two. And no one was really talking about that concept. Um, so throughout 2018, the reason why I kept dollar cost averaging was more so, and 2019 was more so, just because I was living. Oh, can you still hear me? Yeah, because I was living and breathing crypto, I was just seeing the amount of just development hours, and I suppose that non-speculative side of things. I was seeing that fundamental progress on things like Ethereum scaling plans and all of that, that I was still confident enough that crypto would be here in several years. So that was sort of my rationale for like still just like putting some money into it throughout 2019.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Um, my other question was because you said that you had made people lots of money through your fundamental research throughout 2017. Did you put on your resume that through your fundamental analysis, crypto user 2869 made 4 million off Qcoin? And is that how you kind of bootstrapped your career forward?
Nah, that's nothing like that. In 20, it was the most like ones that I suppose that are still painful in some respects, to be honest, is all that the inception of like DeFi summer and all of that, just covering projects that were at the cycle lows after, I don't know, call it 12 to 18 months after the 2017 and like, well, early 2018 highs for likes of ETH.
Yeah.
So probably we're getting into probably middle of 2019, covering the likes of Haven or have like Synthetics, like previous project that it was known as, and ETHLend before it became Aave,
Yeah.
and sort of covering those projects back then, and like watching like the inception of DeFi sort of play out. Yeah, I was already like an analyst like by that stage.
Mm.
But yeah, certainly know just through anecdotally and just talking with people or messaging people that that research was able to like change different people's lives, which is which is really like warms me. But there is still part of me that was like, oh shit, like should have backed myself more back then, rather than just like focusing on the research side of things and then just sort of tuning out.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense as well. When did you become an analyst officially?
Yeah, it would be throughout 2018 towards the end. I would have been going more towards part-time research, and then I was juggling that with like part-time crypto news reporting.
Yeah.
So I would have said, yeah, it would have been through 2019
Yeah.
that I went full-time, probably towards more of the start of 2019 that I went full-time analyst and stopped doing like the news coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's cool. And through this period of time, um, at what point did you come on board with Collective Shift, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so that was the inception of that was around the middle of 2020,
Yep.
and that was just through Twitter, like good old crypto Twitter, as it was known as back in the day. Now it's all just this AI slop, unfortunately. But yeah, it was really just through DMs on Twitter that I got approached to become like a full-time analyst, and then met Ben when he had moved over from Tassie. In one of this apartments that he was renting. Where very young Ben back then.
Yeah.
And yeah,
17,
we got
right? He was
got
17
started
years
with
old.
the Collective Shift platform, and that was throughout. Well, yeah, we did have an office in Brunswick back in the day, and then that was around the time COVID hit as well. So yeah, it was mostly as Collective Shift was getting up and going. That was mostly working from home environment. So yeah, then the NFT craze sort of arrived after that. But yeah, Collective Shift been there since the start.
Wow. Wow. And how has it been at a research firm like Collective Shift over the period of time with cycles? And if you had to describe what Collective Shift is for someone who is listening, what is Collective Shift?
Yeah, so we're essentially a market research provider. Like we create content on our outlook for like the price of Bitcoin, or like where we think the current crypto market is and where we think it's going, based on our investment and experience over the years, and also just our time like in the market. So yeah, it's really positioned for busy professionals who just don't have the time to keep up to date with something like crypto. So a lot of our members would be working outside of the crypto industry, unlike some other sort of crypto research firms in the space where they're creating content for industry participants. Ours is more so for the high net worth sort of, well, retail investors ultimately. So
Yep.
that has changed a lot over the years, where what I would say is that our research team and what our team focuses on has changed dramatically, since prior cycles. Compared to prior cycles, these days it's a lot more focused on the majors, like Bitcoin, ETH, and some others, and then also covering or spending more time understanding the macro environment. Not so much creating content on it, but more time spent actually following it and understanding it, versus prior cycles where it was a lot more like altcoin discovery and like coverage of early stage crypto projects, even ones that were prior to their token generation event. So that's been a noticeable change, and obviously coverage of things like NFTs. You know, implied there is that that's also dropped out of the coverage where we did, you know, cover quite a bit of the NFT craze like before it started and as it was starting, and even sort of in the aftermath where, you know, even myself, like a fellow Australian that you may have had on the channel, I'm not sure, but Greg Oakford, you know, we were two of the famous sort of Moonbird bag holders throughout the NFT craze. But yeah, the focus of the research team is yeah, changed dramatically over the years, just like the space, I suppose.
Yeah, I I do believe that the space has definitely transitioned away from, I guess, the altcoin gem to how would the
Mm,
JPOW news event or the
mm,
interest rate discussion come about and affect the markets. So yeah, a really big change. How do you feel about NFTs from when they first came to, I guess, popularity versus now? Like, do you believe that the hype is truly gone? Do you think that there is any value there? What's your sort of take on it?
mm. Yeah, I don't really have that strong of an opinion on the entire NFT market anymore. I think the likes of, you know, Pudgy Penguins and even Crypto Punks, like if I had to choose like a side, I would say it's more likely that they will accrue value over time. Um, but even like the reasons for that, even in saying that, you still have a lot of execution risk with something like Pudgy Penguins, which I really hope that they do well. But overall, I can't see NFTs returning with any like vigor like they had in you know years prior. Like reasons for that are intrinsic to crypto and also like external, like, you know, just the interest rates globally, like things like that. Like, you know, we're no longer in like that near zero interest rate sort of environment. But then also in the internal side of things, like we've got meme coins and other things to sort of like take our attention now, I suppose, as a collective like crypto market. I think meme coins, if you're going to speculate on something, make so much more sense than things like NFTs, even though I will admit I really do long for the days of like NFT market. It was just crazy in terms of just the degeneracy, like the whole concept of like the reveals and so many shenanigans going on. But it's for the best. I think that those days are over.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for a lot of the creatives that did get like ultimately got sold like misinformation, really, like that there was this narrative going around like that I do look back on that blockchain technology like had solved this whole automatic like royalty paying like mechanism, which ultimately wasn't true. Like if I sold you a piece of art and that person sold that piece of art like years later, like ultimately the narrative was that the artist would be getting like basically perpetual revenue because the smart contracts were designed as such that they would like automatically get money kept streaming to them. But what the creatives like didn't get told was that, you know, there are still some like that whole concept isn't really like solved, and it's quite difficult for a blockchain to actually figure out and to know like when to pay royalties and when not to. So yeah, that's like it's just a massive like moment in time that I'll never forget, that whole NFT craze. But overall, I just can't see them. I can't see them returning.
Yeah. R.I.P. Moonbirds.
Yeah, I just saw they got acquired not long ago. So someone, I think Spencer, is Spencer Ventures is trying to resuscitate them. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I just the incentives, the incentive like alignment, just it just really isn't there between like these collectors and these like basically people who are wanting to flip NFTs, or if not flip them, they're just wanting to hold them for maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months max. Like their incentives and demands out of the project, like the people running the project, it's just so like it's just not sustainable. And like
Mm,
I can understand like why it's resulted in the situation we find ourselves in today.
yeah. Yeah. I often wonder. if they will come back or if there's ever actually a need to own NFTs again. And the more I think about it, the less I like the answer, I guess. Um, but yeah, that's a really good perspective. So no strong opinions. Got it. Do you think or feel that overall opportunity to seek outsized returns will diminish over time? That could be towards majors or altcoins. What's your general thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I've been consistent in this view for a while. It's really just I guess a symptom of like or a consequence or whatever of the asset class just getting bigger, really. And as we were talking about earlier, really like Bitcoin now, the coverage of it is really an additional, point to the macro coverage in many respects. Or even the movements in Bitcoin are often reflected in changes happening in the macro environment. Previously had those sort of whatever idiosyncratic sort of movements where altcoins would go on a run and it wouldn't really matter what was going on in like the business news or the political cycle. But now I think it's the upside is like significantly narrowed compared to like getting the next like 50x. Like you could back in the day with like those DeFi projects, at least 50x in some cases. I think that opportunity or those days are long gone. So like the expected return from even if it is majors, or even just your typical altcoin that's ranked 100th to 500th on CoinGecko,
Yeah,
you know the upside that you should be expecting from that, like from an investment standpoint, I think it like in my opinion is like far less than like what it used to be.
yeah,
And it's like sucks to say that, but I guess it is my opinion.
yeah. Do you think there would be a return to outsized returns to altcoins in condensed periods, similar to
Like
2021?
relative to Bitcoin or
Yeah, relative to Bitcoin, like I guess basically what I'm trying to say is like, do you think it's possible that a 2021 style altcoin cycle would present itself in the future, or do you think that that period of time is kind of lost?
it could happen again, but I don't think it would be for many years. It really would require like interest rates and like just speculation and appetite for risk to just like go off the charts like once again.
Yeah,
In my opinion, like I still think we're going to get periods even in 2025 in the second half of this year and potentially early next year. I still strongly expect, and I'd be shocked if we didn't have any periods like that were over the length of say call it 3 weeks, like 3+ weeks of like these periods and bursts where altcoins just like really significantly outperform Bitcoin. Um, I would be shocked if we did not have any of that and this cycle sort of ended. Even asking for something like that is significantly different from like, prior cycles where you get these prolonged sort of altcoin runs at the end of a bull market,
yeah,
um, where it was just like you just got so used to the idea of altcoins just going up by more than Bitcoin that people would then question, oh, why would you even hold something like Bitcoin?
yeah,
I think we'll get those little chapters like in this cycle, but yeah, the extent, I guess two things, like the extent to which those returns will be like bigger than Bitcoin, and the second part, like just the length of time. I think those two have like both come down dramatically compared to like prior bull markets.
yeah, yeah. For someone
It's
that's
like
yeah,
here
go
we
on.
are, we're in like June like 2025, and like Bitcoin dominance like just hit um what 4.5 year highs like in dominant, like it's like it's 2/3 of the entire market, like it's 65.7%. I'm just looking at it now, and like that's its highest Bitcoin dominance, that's its highest since January 2021.
Wow.
And we're getting towards what many people, and including myself, like we're getting towards the end of this bull market. And this is the by definition, like there's some great charts out there which which show just like altcoin dominance. Like it typically lasts like alt season, quote unquote alt season, typically lasts around 30% of the entire bull market's duration. That was definitely the case the two cycles prior to this. And I would, so therefore we need to be like around 70% of the way through this bull market, which I definitely think we're more than 70% of the way through. Yet here we are with Bitcoin dominance like still climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty like, it really does like just slap you in the face every time you look at it if you are someone with like, pretty big altcoin bags. And even just the others dominance. So others is just, all cryptocurrencies, and then you deduct the top 10 by market cap. That's fallen below 7%, just like over the past week or so. And that hasn't happened since January 2021 as well. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. That's Yeah, I don't even have to look at the charts. I just know that my
Yeah,
portfolio is
exactly.
doing
Like, it wasn't shocking, but
fine.
it was just, yeah.
Do you think, with your history with looking at various projects or assets from a fundamental lens, that um, you believe that there is still like opportunity and good fundamental projects out there? Or do you think, from what you've experienced, like you can find good fundamental projects, but it doesn't kind of matter because on a long enough time frame, it won't be anything sort of meaningful. Like, how have you managed that?
Mm, yeah. The first part of your question, I do think, I do think there are still like fundamentally sound projects that have solid enough like value accrual mechanisms, and I suppose other factors as well, that lend themselves to be like really, I guess like heavily demanded by the market. Like as we know, and as you said earlier with your spreadsheet example, like just because something has like really good stats and metrics going up only, that's only one ingredient that you need to get like some really solid price movement. For better or worse, that's just the reality of crypto. And I still believe there are some great projects that have like great growth metrics, but then also they have like that sort of special sauce or whatever where you can see other people putting a lot of money into them. So therefore you also put money into them.
Yeah,
That's a lot of how crypto goes. So HyperLiquid has been like the standout in that regard. Like it just has so many great, I guess, reasons to expect it to go higher in the future. It will definitely reach a point where it gets overvalued, which again is subjective. But right now, it's like fully diluted value is creeping up, and is more or less around the same as Coinbase and Circle, which is certainly getting up there. If you're one of those people who really like respects FDV, but no, I will admit they're few and far between. Like those really fundamentally sound projects that also have that sort of special source of being attractive from an investment standpoint.
yeah. Do you feel like those teams that are building those products and protocols in the space, that are genuine, that are trying to build, product market fit, are kind of hard done by when their like utility or governance like token just hurdles towards zero, kind of defeating the work that they put in?
I feel mostly no. I don't feel bad for them, but partially I do. The reason is like it would just fundamentally suck if like it's more just I don't know, you can call it unlucky or just I don't know, a lack of even due diligence on your own behalf of looking into how crypto works. But it would suck like if you were getting like you hit your sort of 12-month cliff or something, and the token has like just been down only because it was a high FDV, low float sort of project. And by the time that 12th month and even the 24th month and all of that, like you're starting to get your unlocks compensation, and the token price is just been down, like it's just down horrendously. Like I feel somewhat like bad for those people, but ultimately like not really. Like it's market forces at work. Hindsight's 2020, but for those like really intelligent people who are maybe really book smart or they're just genuinely trying to make the world a better place, and they have these blockchain based protocols, or maybe they're building their own chain, which they're very visionary, and they think that it is going to be a net benefit to society. Like, sure, that's their belief, but if the market like just doesn't agree with their belief, then I don't really have much, like, I don't really feel that bad for them. Like, the one that comes to mind, that when you did ask that question, like the one that came to my mind was Starknet.
Mm,
You know, they seem like a very competent, technically sound team that has done a lot for, I guess, like applied cryptography and like really moved the space forward. But famously, like their Stark token launched at around 20, I think it was up
billion.
towards 20 billion, like
Yeah.
FDV. If not, it was in like the mid to high teens. I just checked the other day, and that's down to, I think it did drop below 1 billion FDV.
Wow.
And that was like not that long ago. I feel like that it launched. So they're like the team that came to mind when you asked that. But there's countless others.
Yeah.
So really, it's just market forces at work, which, for better or worse, crypto like does an excellent job of like very quickly. The market will tell you whether it likes or does not like a certain valuation.
Yeah, I agree with that. It also kind of makes uh, the playing field very fair, because I think if
Yes.
all altcoins head to zero, it kind of allows people to not feel like they needed to have researched the product as well. Hence I think the framing of, ape now, research later is so prominent, because,
Mm,
I wouldn't have known Starknet was a technically sound project and team if you had not told me. But if the price had
mm,
gone up a lot, I would have felt compelled to understand why. So,
yes. Yeah, that's like that part, like always, like is so fascinating to me, like about crypto, and it's a big reason why I'm still here. Like, I still do think there's like some really like promising developments happening in like the actual like scaling, like, and scalability of like these blockchains, that they can ultimately like unlock new use cases. And as regulations improve, which they're, or come into law, and there's all these bills being drafted up, I still think like adoption is continues to improve. It's just there are some certain, I guess, like factors at play that have really halted, the pace of development in crypto. But yeah, I still believe that there will be use cases that sort of makes this space here for many decades.
yeah. Yeah. And I think to add to that as well, I kind of perceive the fact that because there's so many like fraudulent and scammy behavior and nonsensical tokens to participate in, that the more that goes on, the more opportunity one has to sniff out like those future
Yes.
opportunities.
Yes, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And one post that I'm starting to just like draft, or at least not even that, like one list I'm starting to just like form, like just have in my notes, is I'm really like aware of just jotting down some projects that I think have just been prematurely like written off because their reputation is like so terrible. And also that broader trend of what you just said, that a lot of people are now like turning a blind eye to crypto and just moving on to other markets or other areas of tech, like AI, of course. And therefore, yes, that whole trend could be correct. Like, of course, crypto may not amount to anything in the future, but I definitely don't believe that's the case. So yeah, I do see it as a big opportunity as these weeks and months go by. That there will be some hidden gems. As much as I hate that term, I think it's like really applicable to the like sort of conditions we're like arguably in right now.
Yeah, and that's I think it's cool to hear you say that, because I feel like when the markets are down
Mm.
and there's not much happening, I think that constant looking for the next opportunity is good, and yeah, keeps me like energetic, engaged, focused as well. Even though you're kind of eating glass, and you kind of
Yeah.
have to sift through a lot of garbage, but
Oh
um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. 100%. Like, there's, yeah, not only like, I guess, the fundamental like development of the tech, but then also like, also just whatever, like the supply schedules, like that side of things as well. Just like you need time to go by for these tokens to actually start to look interesting from an investment standpoint, like waiting for the likes of Celestia and other projects for their tokens just to like enter the market. Like that, as every week and month goes by, there's like more of those like supply, like there's more of those tokens here in the market. So like that's a factor, but that in and of itself should never be like a reason to be getting excited about the investment side of things. Like you also need that other ingredient, like fundamental improvement in the tech and actual product market fit. Like are
Yeah.
people actually using this project, and are more businesses or users are likely to start using it in the future?
Yeah. No, I agree with that as well. I think there's a few examples like that where um, you probably were around for when FriendTech launched, but
Mm, mm,
I think that one is one of those ones where I think the founder may have ran off with the funds. I actually don't know, but I look at this thing and I think that there was always something there for the way that it had users and captivated an audience around
yes.
ETH. And um, I realized when I looked at it again the other day, and I know I'm a little bit like projecting this like thought onto you, but I thought FriendTech was successful for the fact that it incorporated ETH as a commodity into its platform. So therefore, the buying and selling activity was more realistic of participation because it wasn't just like an airy fairy governance token. It was actually
Mm,
ETH. So like your earning potential for participation was rewarded to you in ETH. And the way
mm,
that they obviously had their like closed door decks, they had a lot of control over a lot of that activity. So
mm.
yeah, there's not really a question here, but it was just I kind of just remembered that. Thought I'd talk to you about it.
Yeah, there's other like examples like even like they're almost like projects that are pre-token, and like they're almost like the genuine like fun days, unless airdrop farmers of course, but
Yeah,
like I guess they're the most raw examples of like does something actually have an interest from people to use it. Like the one that comes to mind for me is like Fantasy Top, which I've been playing more or
yeah,
less weekly. I've been playing that just about weekly. For I don't know, like more or less since it launched. Like I don't even remember. That was probably been like a year and a half now.
that's on
And I can't
Blast though,
remember.
isn't it?
I can't remember using like it is on Blast still. So
Yeah,
technically, I am still connecting to Blast weekly, which is crazy. So I would expect them to like get a new deal with like some other chain. That's my expectation. But like I can't remember using like an app in the crypto space like that consistently over that duration of time. So yeah, there are still like pockets of like different social experiments, and for better or worse, like even what Zora did recently and Base like really got slammed for pushing this whole creator coin, like which was like so poorly done in how they communicated it, and it
yeah,
copped so much criticism. But that whole concept of just like tokenizing like different pieces of content or podcasts, and like there are some cool things that you can do on the boundary of like, you know, token gating different like access to certain like content and all of that stuff. But you know, do you need, and what is the net benefit to society if people are like speculating on like the market price of like, you know, this podcast episode that's going up on like Zora? Like who the hell knows? But like the fact that we're experimenting on that in real time and like speed running, I guess, information gathering and like fact finding on like how important this stuff actually is, I find that concept like pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. I think you mentioned a lot of apps there that are still kind of underdiscovered. But what is fantasy top for those people that don't understand it?
Yeah, essentially it's like, yeah, playing, it's essentially like fantasy, like the concept of like, yeah, fantasy sport, whether it's like, yeah, NFL or whatever. Like I'm sure people listening are familiar with that idea, and you're essentially like speculating on the performance of different people's Twitter accounts, um in terms of how much how much traction their posts will be getting in terms of likes, retweets and like comments and whatnot. And you're speculating on, okay, like every round of Fantasy Top goes for a week, or 5 days actually. So you're sort of speculating on like okay, is this person's market value, are they overvalued or undervalued based on their prior history of like performance on Twitter?
Yeah.
There's some like, you know, really niche things on like, is this project coming up for an announcement? Therefore, is this account going to be tweeting, or are they in like lockdown builder mode? So therefore, they're likely not going to be posting. But that's getting into the weeds a bit too much. But really, it's just like you can win. Like you have to pay for these cards. There's like there's an open market for like the price of like a certain person's like, you know, certain card that they like, you can buy and play them in your team essentially. And there's certain like rarity levels that's are like multipliers for your overall score. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just been cool seeing the app launch from, I guess, day zero, and seeing like the consistent like improvements to the actual app and making it easier to use. All the while they've sort of figured out how to, I guess, make it more enticing from like a speculative standpoint in terms of like being able to win ETH every week. And then they've also introduced like other game modes as well, which you can also like win ETH if you know, put in the hours of actually understanding how the market works. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really like, their user retention is like off the charts compared to like so many other apps that we see in the space. But of course, their fantasy like token is still expected to come out pretty soon. So, you know, we can talk about it maybe in a few months, and maybe that retention will go down. But yeah, really impressive stuff overall.
Yeah, I get you on next time. You're like, yeah, so the airdrop came through, and
Yeah,
yeah, 7 figures. Actually, I actually did really well on it. You got on it though after I talked to you about it. I'm like,
right,
yeah.
right.
Are there any other apps that catch your eye, and if so, why?
Not so much like the user, or just like on the consumer side of it. I still like use Zora. Um, you know, here and there, it's like just mint stuff, and sort of I like the idea of like looking back on like my profile, and like it's just cool to like look back on certain eras of the crypto market and like seeing what you did mint like in the past. But it's certainly like a very niche sort of thing. Otherwise, it's really just using things like Jupiter and
Yeah,
like, you know, those similar sort of like, I guess, Pumpfun competitors. Like that certainly captured a lot of like the space, like, and just like mental energy of like the market in recent times. Seeing that sort of progress. But there's not really many other sort of novel apps that I'm using on a consistent basis, especially in recent weeks with all this macro sort of side of things. I feel like I've been spending more time in macro in recent weeks than actual crypto itself.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to know more about that transition for yourself, going from fundamental research for like altcoins into macro. I did have a question though around like Pumpfun and the massive onslaught of meme coins that came from it. Did you believe that
Mm.
that had a net negative on the space, or if so, why not? Or if it did or didn't?
Mm. Yeah, my like the first thing that came to my mind when you like asked that was it felt inevitable anyway. Like
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's sort of like that was the emergent use case of crypto, I guess, in 2024, and like that was just a reflection of like where how far the tech has come, and just still the lack of killer use cases due to like blockchains like still struggling to break through to be able to handle like mass adoption like
yeah,
in one at one sort of simultaneous time. So yeah, I don't know. Like when I think of Pump Fun, like overall, as I was saying earlier, like I still think crypto and the baggage it has carried since like the Terra Luna days and the FTX days, you know, already had sort of a bad smell about it. And then this speculation side of things with Pump Fun and all of that, it was more so just a continuation of crypto just like spiraling into this like degeneracy.
yeah,
So yeah, overall, Pump Fun. I'm not going to say it's a net positive, but I don't think it's I disagree that like it's been like a negative for the space, or that it's held the space back, because my argument would be like if Pump.Fun like wasn't here anyway, I don't think there'd be much going on.
yeah. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Um, it's interesting. I like the way that you tied it into the Terra Luna collapse. The fact that it had a bad smell, and then we kind of perpetuated that smell with a massive fan when we decided to, you know,
Y-
launch Pump.Fun and then a million shitters per day or whatever it was.
Yeah, and like in many ways, it was like I do think they are like quite heavily tied together. Like just like the fact that then like forced particularly the US administration, like the Biden administration, then to get super cold on crypto, like knowing like SBF like had donated so much, and they then like did not want to touch crypto, and if they did, it was like something very like negative to sort of strangle the industry, and that sort of like chilling effect, and just like the lack of any optimism over like the short to medium term of like regulations. I
Yeah,
feel like it just like really deterred so many like genuinely like ambitious people, and like people who were wanting to do things for the greater good, that it just attracted all these like people who were those typical all the Sahil sort of types, and like that sort of meme of like people in the Middle East just like launching all these shitters, like it just like left the door open for them to come in and just steal all the attention.
yeah, yeah. It did take quite a while for, I guess,
Mm,
a new administration and a few key different people to start
mm.
changing the way that people perceive crypto. Like, if you think about how long ago 2022 was, it wasn't that long ago, and now we've got senators actively um, championing the idea of
Oh
having
yeah.
a Bitcoin strategic reserve, which we can definitely come to that back to that sort of line of topic when it when it aligns to macro in just a few moments. I just wanted to ask you quickly, just on the topic of pump fun. Do you believe that with Pumpfun and the level of research that you give and the people that you work with at Collective Shift, that there's starting to be a separation of crypto users? Like the users themselves are kind of being a lot more vast in terms of belief structures, investment strategies, and I guess why they're essentially participating.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think it. Yeah, I think the typical user is a lot different to previously. I think they're ultimately like getting into pump fun or memes, like just similar for similar reasons to things like sports gambling, and like a lot of them these days are like just using these apps like on their phone, like which itself is just such a different behavior to crypto around 2021, and everyone was on a desktop and all of that. So yeah, I think that side of things, the typical user has changed dramatically, but also also it could just be a reflection of like a self-reinforcing thing where they're the ones that are making the most noise on like social media and whatnot. But I don't think that's the case. I definitely look back on those like days of 2020 and 2021 where you had a lot more people from like traditional finance, like getting involved in or learning about DeFi, but then you also had the NFT era of all these different creatives, and it was like such a diverse time in crypto. Even people from deep in when that was like kicking off.
Yeah,
But now, sure, there's some people from those era, like a lot of people from that era that are still around. But the like net new user, like very likely these days, is someone, just getting onboarded to punt on a meme coin. So I hope that that answer does change in time. But I think to answer your question, that's definitely changed.
yeah, I definitely think so as well, in the sense that um, I've spoken to a few close people about how they kind of perceive the space in terms of opportunity investment, and some of them are more heavily aligned to just punting something with a hot narrative rather than developing like the most in-depth. I'll wait in this coin for like 9 months before I sell, to realize the investment idea and the price appreciation. And I definitely think that that trend was a little bit different last cycle, where because prices were going up for everything, it was almost as if the participants that got involved at that stage were opportunistic, like hopeful believers in the tech,
Mm,
rather than this time around where they're more aligned to like, I kind of like the idea of making money really quickly, and I'm actually not like too caring about which vehicle gets me there, whether it's this shitter
Yeah.
on this chain or this shitter on the other chain. And
Yeah,
I'd like
definitely.
that to change at some point in the future. I think that would be cool. But yeah,
Yeah, no, that's been very, very noticeable. And hey, maybe things like, you know, continued regulations. There's talk about this market structure bill in the US. You know, hopefully, you know, there's a lot for it to go through in terms of progress. So, you know, maybe sometime next year it actually goes to Trump's office and gets signed into law, and we will just get a lot more of a industry that like focuses on like metrics and like projected growth of certain protocols and whatnot. But that would bring in its own sort of audience of investors. But yeah, that's really far out from now. And I think people these days who are left in crypto, like they're really burnt from prior cycles where they were essentially they learnt not to have a long term like outlook on any cryptocurrency that isn't Bitcoin because they got burnt so badly and all the narrative traders, you know, did so well.
mm,
So I think those people are really like focused now on like just nailing those narrative sort of trades, and that's really the dominant sort of like talk that you do here.
yeah, yeah. I definitely don't think my views are aligned at my own bag bias at all. You
No,
know,
no,
not at
of
all.
course not.
As you've sort of pivoted from altcoin gem finder to macroeconomic analyzer,
Professor.
professor, how have you found? Because you're probably much more into the weeds than I am. How have you found Bitcoin's fundamental value and perception change on the world stage with everything that's been going on in the macro backdrop?
Yeah, like you said something earlier that often like is another way I describe Bitcoin to people. Like I often like love to think of it as a chameleon, like because to your point earlier, it's basically more or less the exact same code base that launched in early 2009.
Yeah.
But our interpretation on like what it can be useful for and like the whole point of it has changed many times.
Mm,
Oh, not many times, but several times. Like the dominant sort of like top talking points of what Bitcoin is, and yeah, certainly, you know, these days, mid 2025, it's, yeah, absolutely. I think the consensus is it's seen as just a vehicle that's, yeah, separate from the whole sort of TradFi system that has properties that are similar to gold, but, you know, I guess they're cryptographically like even more, I guess, provable, or it's more verifiably scarce, and also has some other benefits compared to gold that you can't, you know, you don't need to lug it around, and transportation costs and all of that. That's by far like the dominant narrative that I see people understanding Bitcoin as. And even as I was just saying that, I saw like I do follow the work of like the Bitwise like
mm,
executives over the years. Like I've always liked, you know, their outlook and their even their like some of their notes that they publish. And even one of them was saying even this week that something that they're running into in terms of pushback on Bitcoin. Like a lot of those typical arguments against Bitcoin have sort of been crossed out as the years have gone by.
yeah.
However, one of the remaining areas of pushback that they're getting these days is there are a lot of investors who don't give a shit about like investing in gold, so therefore they automatically write off Bitcoin, which I found that like super interesting. Like, and it's sort of like just like goes to show how far Bitcoin's come. But I guess it's also like limiting in a sense. If we keep pushing this whole digital gold thing, it unfortunately, like for people who aren't curious, it sort of just forces, if they don't care about gold, then that automatically forces results in them just like writing off Bitcoin, which is something I just like didn't even think about. And I found that pretty interesting. I just read the other day.
Yeah. That is super interesting though, because you would not have thought it's like digital gold and like, yeah, we know we don't like gold anyway. We are actually after good fundamental stonks, and they're like,
Yes, yeah,
ah,
I know. Like I could just like getting like that's what Bitwise said is now one of their most common like areas of pushback. So yeah, that was interesting. Otherwise, they said just like the growth multiple and like the expected upside. It was also something they have as a, I guess technically like a pushback, like people just not seeing the whole risk reward. But yeah, certainly, yeah, Bitcoin is, yeah, it's hard to explain like how much it's changed. Even obviously we're seeing retail interest still at like such like incredibly low, um, like just low levels. Even when you just look at things like Google search volumes, or you know, you do those charts, or even you look at YouTube stats, or even like web ranking stats, like it's all very much like borderline, like such a minimal like interest from retail participants in Bitcoin and crypto. So therefore, like just the change in the whole institutionalization of, and just the those entrants coming into getting exposure to Bitcoin, and even now like certain sovereign level adoption of Bitcoin, and different endowments around the world, and other sort of institutional investors like all of a sudden, you know, chucking in like 0.5 or 1% of their portfolios into Bitcoin. It's like pretty cool to see and live through that transition.
Yeah.
But it just makes me think about, you know, where will the chameleon sort of go next? Like what's the next chapter hold for Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I was going to ask you this as well because I've noticed a trend between a lot of the subjective descriptions that people have assigned to Bitcoin, and you're someone that's seen a lot of fundamental projects. So, if we look objectively at what Bitcoin is from a technical level, where do you think some of the drawbacks are for Bitcoin from a technical perspective?
I think like still the drawback, or just the challenge that I think will inevitably come, is the resistance to like quantum computing. So I think ultimately like that will happen that will need to be sorted out at a social layer, in a sense, like from what I've understood with like conversations with people. Um, you know, just the whole thing about, how do Satoshis, like, you know, Bitcoin balances, like, you know, be upgraded, essentially, if they are to upgrade Bitcoin to make it more quantum resistant. You know, that's an area that is often, well, that is still just like, I guess, up for debate. There is a whole like talk that, you know, what happens when the last Bitcoin is mined? Like, why would anyone be interested in mining Bitcoin? And like, wouldn't the whole economic security just like collapse once like the last Bitcoin is mined? But I've I've never really, I don't know, it could just be me just being like naive, or I've never really thought that that is too big of an issue.
Yeah.
People often point to that as a big issue, but you know, who's to say we aren't just dramatically overpaying for Bitcoin's economic security at the moment? Like, I haven't really seen a good argument about like why, like in today 2025, like we may just be, you know, paying way too much for Bitcoin security. So it'll be just fine in terms of being defensible and like resistant to attacks if it just didn't have that much rewards through like block subsidies and whatnot. So
Mm.
there's also like things that are in the realm of like fee revenues that may change like in the future for Bitcoin. But yeah, they're the two things that like are still by far the, in my like from in my realm, that I see like the two biggest, I guess, unanswered questions for Bitcoin in terms of its like architecture, or whatever you want to call it, design, quantum resistance, and also just like, I guess, economic security over a prolonged period.
Yeah. Do you think that there's because the quantum computing one is like for me the airy fairy one. It's like if
Mm.
quantum computing existed, I feel like Bitcoin would be the last thing people would care about.
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if
100%. Like
if
global
Bitcoin
commerce. Like,
exactly. It's like global commerce is probably a little bit more time sensitive than this shiny orange unrealized rock.
yeah, there
Um,
is that part of it.
do you think that the fact that people perceive this as a store of value, and not something that one would typically spend as a currency, do you think that would harm it in the long run? Or do you think it's limited in its ability to be used as a currency due to its transaction times? Or those like characteristics together, do you think that realistically is not great for the type of asset that it is.
Yeah, I've always been going back and forth in my head over the years about, that we had all the developments of like the Lightning Network
Yep.
and all of that, and the secondary layers, that we've seen over recent years. And obviously Stacks had a massive, release in Q3, I think last year. You know, I've always gone back and forth on, is this actually like accelerating, I guess, the upside in terms of an investment lens for Bitcoin, or is it actually like hurting um, the upside for Bitcoin in terms of how high the price could go? Like the fact that it can be used um, as a currency to like really be an efficient and fast way to transact and pay for things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly don't have a strong view on like where I land on that. I just let the market sort of, I guess, tell me. And from what I've seen over the years, I've just seen the talk about Lightning Network and just transactional using Bitcoin as a currency is just, and a unit of account is just like really quiet and like really just like, yeah, slowed down. I haven't seen as much talk about it, but it could
Mm.
just be my social graph as well. Um, but nah, I don't really have many strong views on where it lands for like the investment outlook for Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think, for me, when you get in the weeds too much, you start looking at these things and you kind of try to extrapolate future outcomes
Mm,
based off current information and whether or not it can hold any sort of weight.
mm.
And that's why I kind of refer back to the fact that, it really is what we perceive it to be.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
it's always interesting when someone kind of talks about how it's like potentially manipulated or something like that. I kind of
yeah.
like go back to the fact that there's constant sell pressure from miners. So it's like
Oh
I
yeah,
I believe it's a very hard market to manipulate, so to speak, in quotation marks.
yeah.
And yeah, I just think it's just like it doesn't add up in terms of like both sides of the equation really balance. But pivoting to that as well, did you think that when Ordinals and Runes launched, I know that they weren't at the same time, about 12 months apart, but when they launched, did you think that the fee increase was beneficial to Bitcoin's network?
I think it was at the time when like, well, yeah, I still, my answer's the same. I still thought it was overall like a real benefit, but and the reason for that is the like just the ecosystem and just like it just really prompted like this, like, yeah, just influx of developer, like third party developer interest on like building on top of Bitcoin, and therefore just like just help spread like understanding of Bitcoin and enthusiasm for Bitcoin. And that was something I hadn't really considered. Like, there was so many, well, not so many, but there was just like a noticeable uptick in like Bitcoin, like third party, like Bitcoin sort of developer meetups around the world. And like, sure, they may have already been going on for years, but like the audience size and like people going to these different events like around Amsterdam and London and things like that. I remember at the time just being like nothing I'd seen before in terms of just like enthusiasm for building on these like within the rune space or in the ordinal space. So
Yeah.
overall, like from that standpoint, I think it was fantastic. But then there were certainly, I do remember a lot of pushback from, those who were real advocates for using Bitcoin for payments. They were the ones that were really loud about, yeah, being harmed in many ways, or really complaining in a sense of like having to share this block space with, yeah, with people who were speculating on these things like ordinals and runes, which I could understand the frustration, and that's where I suppose you get down to the argument of like, yeah, what is Bitcoin like right now, and how are we using it right now, and what is the market doing to sort of, I guess, adjust people's views on how to use Bitcoin or ways to use Bitcoin. And I don't know, I think the activity in ordinals and runes has now isn't like what it was back then, and the fee revenue therefore has really diminished. So I guess those people are happy again that they can use Bitcoin as a currency. So there's always winners and losers, but yeah, overall, I thought it was a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember speaking to Checkmate on Chain
Mm,
about it, and he was sort of saying to me that it was graffiti on the chain.
mm.
And I actually can't remember what I said as a rebuttal, but yeah, it must not have been smart enough. But yeah,
It was like, I don't know, in my opinion, like it didn't. Just because like we'd come out and I was like so closely involved in like just like absorbing like all the NFT like mania, and just seeing all that, like it just had so many like consistent like trends that reminded me of that. So I actually never I never got involved in runes or ordinals, and I was never really that confident in its ability to like keep going and keep sustaining, just because I was either just like so burnt from NFT, or I'd actually learnt that like the incentives like were just like not there for people to be interested in, what happens when price has already gone up 10x, like who's the net new buyer. And I don't know, I wasn't that confident that it would keep going at the pace it was. So that's why I didn't really spend too much time on it personally. But like there are still, projects in the space from my understanding. But now you've got the likes of Stacks and whatnot, really building on that secondary layer.
yeah, yeah. I've put in my notes that you're an ordinal and rune hater, because you didn't want to join in the fun and buy the top and lose money like I did. So I'll remember
Yeah,
this.
or lost enough money in other JPEGs from other chains.
Yeah, it's like no, I
It's all the
can't.
same shit, same outcome.
I can't pull a moon's bird again. You
Yeah.
may not know this, but did you see that Stacks is introducing a proposal to increase their supply?
No, no, I didn't.
Okay, that's all right. We'll save this. We'll save this. I had this in my notes that I just wrote down. But the TLDR is that they have come out and they've said that they are going to increase their supply. They're going to pivot away from the fact that they're on a halving cycle that aligns to Bitcoin to stop
Yeah.
unnecessary inflationary tokenomics. But they've decided that they're going to in, and I might actually have this wrong, but this is my understanding, that they're going to nuke their token supply so they can recoup revenue and costs to be able to funnel money into developing out a robust ecosystem to support SBTC. And the reason I bring this up is because it's the first time I've kind of seen a chain that is like the Stacks token and SBTC, while they're not competing for shared value because they're different assets, Stacks is making it really apparent that the Stacks is not the most valuable, STX is not the most valuable asset on its chain.
Yeah,
And
right.
I find that shift really interesting. I don't know where the like upside is apart from holding Bitcoin or SBTC inside the ecosystem, but I thought
Mm.
I'd share this development with you because I think it's really interesting that they've decided to go down this path of not nuking their token, but inflating the token supply enough to build up a war chest or a treasury to then start using it more proactively to support what they know is valuable and on their chain. And
Yeah,
I wonder if there's going to be many trends like that in the future, actually.
yeah. It's almost like it's like they sort of had to. It seems like they're at like a fork in the road where they sort of more or less they couldn't just keep like towing the line. They had to choose a side
Yeah.
and like piss one party off. But ultimately, it's almost like a like accumulation of learnings from probably the broader crypto space. But also that seems rather unique that they've the actual what many people would say is the primary token, has been, I guess, cast aside as, if it is that strong. But like the actual liquid token itself is seemingly, being favored. Do you know if it's like still at the proposal stage or like gathering information stage, or is it a bit more advanced than that?
I think it's definitely an SIP. I
Yeah,
would say from the lack of chatter on the timeline, it's currently in the proposal stage.
yeah,
But I agree with it. I just think that Obviously, like for me, Stacks was one of my largest positions that I had for like the past 3 years, and
Mm.
I'm now like slowly exiting out of that position,
Mm.
but I'm kind of exiting out, obviously at terrible prices,
Mm.
and at the invalidation that I know that there's like a strategic next step. It's not like their token's dying and they're trying to hide the fact that it's dying. It's like, oh no, we're avidly killing it, because we believe
Yeah.
in a more
Yeah.
robust asset within crypto. And I think that I believe I think this trend will continue um, throughout crypto. But it kind of like if you think about the Cosmos ecosystem for a second, and you think about
Mm.
like Osmosis, I don't even know if that's a chain, but just say Osmosis is a chain, and
Yeah, it is.
they have Atom on there. Osmosis the chain is like undesirable for robust security, and Atom the token is an undesirable asset for store of value. So naturally, that
Mm.
ecosystem on a long enough time horizon, from my understanding and investing framework, will go to zero. Whereas like the Stacks ecosystem, I believe, will now remain pretty robust, even though its token will do poorly or won't be the
Mm.
primary thing to invest in. But at least they're a goal of achieving programmable smart contract one-to-one SBTC BTC peg
Mm.
is now like alive and well. And so I wonder if there will be more trends like that. I think you could argue that like a layer two like Arbitrum or
Mm.
Base, if they ever did a token, like of course their token's not going to be the primary asset to hold because ETH is the dominant commodity within that ecosystem.
Mm.
But it's interesting that Stacks is doing it. I think, and I'm still fleshing this idea out, but um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find it interesting. Yeah, as a trend change.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah. I had some notes here. When we were talking about Bitcoin becoming investable to the point where Bitwise has investors turning it down because it's as boring as gold, which is great, I'm sure. Um, do you think that a lot of the attributes that people are giving to Bitcoin can be given to Ethereum? And do you think that Ethereum could be considered a better store of value than Bitcoin from technical levels? Or actually, that whole thing, right? Let's just look at Bitcoin and Ethereum. And the way that Bitcoin's been adopted by institutions is it's had the ETF flows of massive proportions. It's been there's a Michael Saylor behind it. Do you
Mm.
think those attributes as to why those people are buying Bitcoin would actually be better off buying Ethereum, given the technicals on Ethereum might be a little bit better? Have you ever like considered that sort of thought?
No, I've never really been, as much as I like Ethereum, I've never really been a big advocate or a big believer in like things like the flippening. You know, maybe I there's a world where I can see it happening like maybe in like over a decade's time, but
Yeah,
right now like Ethereum is well and truly still competing fiercely with other smart contract like blockchains, and as by no means like I guess carved out its own like, well, yes, it is dominating like that sort of space or that market in terms of some metrics like TVL and just number of developers and things like that. But Bitcoin is like a one of a kind really that has no competitor. Whereas like Ethereum, I still feel like is very much still trying to, I guess, assure its like longevity and like still trying to prove that it can scale. It's still got quite a bit to go in that regard. So yes, I understand that like its scarcity and the whole like dynamics with the deflationary supply and other aspects are appealing, but you need to like respect the fact that the likes of Solana, Sui, and maybe other chains in the future like are still very much competing
yeah,
with Ethereum. So I would never like encourage anyone to, if you're looking for like a store of value, I would always like very confidently say Bitcoin,
Yeah.
unless Ethereum or unless one of the Ethereum competitors or multiple Ethereum competitors is like dropped by the wayside, or Ethereum has like another breakthrough that really like distances itself from its competitors. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bitcoin definitely as like that long-term store of value, I'm much more of a believer in.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because it's the nature of the competition that is given to Ethereum which makes it less compelling as a store of value
Yes.
as well,
Yes.
which is
Yeah, it's like
another dilemma.
defensibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Its defensibility is like so much yeah, far inferior to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we just got to wait till the quantum computing, nukes the global trade and Bitcoin, but because Ethereum has the ability to upgrade its social layer, that will be the commodity that we use.
That's it. 2020, 2029. Oh, that's probably too bullish. Probably 2049. We'll have this. We'll have this. I'll
2049,
be back
yeah.
on in Discord 2020.
Yeah, 2049, we'll set it up. Fast and Furious
Yeah.
1900 will be out around that time.
Yeah.
We'll have some
GTA will still be still be
GTA 6 will still be in the works.
yeah, yeah. But my God, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I'm actually very tempted to upgrade the PS5, upgrade the PS4, get the PS5 just so I can play it. I'm not even a gaming guy, man. I just think there's so much
Nah.
hype around this that I just kind of want to
Yeah.
be a part of it just for once. Like the game
Yeah.
launches, you can talk to people about it. I don't want to be, Game of Thrones 5 years behind after it releases, catching up on
Yeah.
it. I just want to be like in the mix for once.
Yeah. Just to feel something.
Yeah. I want to pivot more towards your own personal investing journey. I think you've probably had a very healthy encounter with crypto to start with in terms of writing about it and having a love for writing and not having a love for losing money. For yourself, how do you realistically perceive an opportunity to invest? Are you looking at it from the perspective of narrative to make money? Are you in the camp of you're on a longer time horizon? Is it a bit of both? Do you like to kind of buy when it looks terrible and then have a lot of faith and belief it'll increase?
Mm.
Yeah, what does that look like for you with your own personal portfolio?
Yeah, it's been a combination of all those. Like in the past, I definitely have like yeah, longer term holdings that yeah, as I just said in that last answer, it's like it is really just Bitcoin that I'm confident at this point in time, like holding for very like multiple decades.
Yeah,
And then everything else, like at this stage of my investment journey, is yeah, I suppose it's predominantly narrative driven, or I guess it's a combination of fundamentals and narrative, and it's all like intra cycle. So it's
intra
all
cycle.
I want to be out 100% of my altcoin positions, ideally as close to the cycle top as possible, which is something that I've never had as my overarching like goal as like definitively like as in the past. Whereas that's just like a reflection on I guess where I'm seeing the crypto market at, in 2025. Like, sure, I would love to, be very like visionary or, like really hopeful that like things will turn around and, invest in something like Athena or Celestia
Yeah,
and like hold them for like 5+ years. But I think anyone doing that, like what we spoke about earlier, is just asking for trouble.
yeah,
And like just really going to be down bad like in like 1 to 2 to 3 years from now. So that's what I expect to happen. So right now, predominantly, um, at the end of the bear market last bear market and after the FTX collapse, like I was one of those people who was, investing in projects that I thought would just too harshly treated. Like Solana was a good example
yeah,
where that's been like, by far my best investment of this cycle. Getting that in like around 21, 22 US dollars. But really, the altcoin investments this cycle have been like few and far between in terms of their success. I've had like different attempts, like, and have done pretty well on ones, and have still like round tripped, like even a few this cycle. but have also like I'm still sitting on some nice like unrealized gains, and still some like airdrop tokens that are still that I suppose I still haven't sold because I still expect them to go higher, but I'm definitely wanting to sell 100% of anything not called Bitcoin, probably by the end of this year, if the way things keep going. So yeah, Solana probably is my biggest position, but my outlook on that has definitely like come down over like the past, probably ever since all the Jupiter and like Meteora sort of controversy and all the allegations of all that insider trading and all of that.
What
I was
happened
probably
there?
more than it. Oh no, all the whatever that guy's name was,
The
not
Meow guy?
Sahil. Nah. Oh no, there was Meteor. Yeah, Meow is like the co-founder of Jupiter, but there was that Meteora, the guy that was like in the dev team behind Jupiter and Meteora, one of the guys that was there for ages, basically got the sack or basically like left the team after all these allegations came out about him being involved in insider trading. That happened around like the local top, I think in like February or March of this year.
Yeah.
And that was not long after like the Trump. Yeah, actually, it was probably in February, I think, because it was not long after the Trump like local top of Solana. And after all the LA cabal, like vape cabal stuff, and it really like has left a really material like damage on in terms of Solana's upside for this cycle. So yeah, certainly my price targets for that have come down from where they were, say like at the end of last year. But HyperLiquid's another position that's like done well.
Yeah.
And that's one if I was to like, and I do still have some like spare cash that I've been waiting, to use, and I might use it pretty soon the way things are going. Like the only one I'm confident in accumulating at the moment is HyperLiquid, for anything that's like still for this cycle.
Yeah. What makes you a big fan of HyperLiquid?
Yeah, I've been obviously in this space like for so long. I've never seen a project that has had the combination of actually earning like a really healthy fee revenue. In terms of between it's mostly seven figures every day. Like sometimes it's like 600 to 900,000 US dollars on like daily fees, but most of the time it's like 1 to 3 million. I've never seen a project that's had the combination of like really healthy fee revenue, but then also had like vast majority going back to buying the token. So like over the years, you've had countless examples of like projects that do one of those two things, but often that doesn't result in like sustained value accruals. So that's like one thing that I really like about HyperLiquid is just the sheer amount of like buyback, like dollars that are just going into buying the token like daily. There's still, interestingly, just an aside, there is still quite little information about I don't know, like how long this like assistance fund, will keep purchasing that token. Like, it doesn't really their documentations just like don't give that much information about is it in like we're assuming it's in perpetuity, I suppose, as a market collective.
Yeah.
But the docs sort of just say if shit hits the fan, like governance can sort of come in and use that assistant fund money to sort of like make things right, but it doesn't really give any other information. But that's just an aside. But otherwise, HyperLiquid, other reasons why I still expect its like price to keep going up, is just upcoming catalysts like HIP3 in terms of like bring on more perpetuals markets through HyperLiquid and another sort of token sync that introduces. So people who are wanting to create these markets need to stake 1 million hype. So that's going to be like, I think, really another source of like material like demand for the hype token. And then just the fact that its ecosystem is still relatively like doesn't have that much support from like custodians and like third party like infrastructure, given that the hyper EVM and that whole chain is like very new. So I think you'll continue to see more like centralized exchange listings. Arguably not all of them because they are direct competitors, but I still think there'll be like some exchanges who list it trying to get like the leg up against their competition for like a quick win in terms of volume and fees.
Yeah.
And you'll get more support from like custodians and certain wallets and whatnot. And then also I think just the market fundamentally like misunderstands hyper like EVM. Um, Given that it was always going to be a phased rollout, but I think the market sort of, it's almost a meme that like that chain just like sucks and like can't do anything, which I sort of love that as an investor because
Yeah.
I obviously like, well, from not obviously because the market clearly got it wrong. Like I still see people shitting on the chain, but like the entire time the team had like well and truly forecasted and like shared and communicated with those who were listening that the chain was going to be like basically neutered and like a V0 when it came out. And like there's still so much you can't do on that chain. So that will gradually be improving throughout 2025 and beyond. That I still am like interested to see like the amount of just appetite to build on that is from what I'm seeing still like, very healthy. So time will tell.
Yeah.
And just one other factor is just the simple sort of like B&B effect really of just like making your most loyal users rich, is like a simple thing that a lot of these projects in recent years have been the opposite of that with the, high FDV, low float. HyperLiquid is a unique one where the early users got like a lot of them were made life-changing money and it just naturally are like now like very supportive of the whole ecosystem, and a lot of those users who have continued to use HyperLiquid are still, I guess, financially incentivized to continue to like just shill the project and like encourage other users to get on board. So that effect that you had with BNB very early, I think will, I guess, be shown here with Hyperliquid. So there's some factors, there's some other ones as well, but they're the main reasons why in 2025, like I look at projects like and like try to get excited about them as investments, but then like I come back to it and just compare it to Hyperliquid, and I often like I do find myself just continuing to come back to like the bull case for buying Hype versus many other altcoins.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. For someone like me, I don't quite understand the EVM. So I'm going to kind of explain my understanding of what the EVM is. So the bridge that you use is Arbitrum, and the EVM is their own chain. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that is.
yeah. So
It's very primitive though. I don't like. Yeah, you can't really do much.
yeah, it's like you said, it's
Yeah,
version 0, and I think there's a lot of
yeah.
novelty and humility to that in the sense that you're not trying to make it so it's polished and ready to go. You're like, hey, this is our version 0. We're building it out this
Mm.
way. Get involved if you want to. What do you like about Hyper EVM in comparison to, I guess, Sol and Ethereum's network or virtual machines?
It's more so just the network effects really, like
Yeah,
just being able to like tap into Hyperliquid, like the order book, and like sure some like there it's really just like the main spot like Bitcoin and ETH and the Hype token that have like really good liquidity. But I would assume like my assumption is that continues to improve like the liquidity profile on Hyperliquid, and like third party developers being able to build certain DeFi apps on the Hyper EVM and then sort of just very easily tap into Hyperliquid's like liquidity and ecosystem. I think those network effects are really like interesting, and a reason why it could succeed. But overall, like from my understanding, like there isn't that much differentiation from another like general purpose blockchain, like
yeah,
in terms of what you can build on it. Like really the big benefit is like that, very close interconnectedness with Hyperliquid's order books.
yeah, yeah. And I think too the revenue buybacks have to help, right? Like,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
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 Okay, so I'm in the wrong
So like that,
bags.
I think like that, the in of themselves, like today they're impressive, sure. Like as I said, like most days they're 7 figures US dollars worth of like buying back of hype from the open market. Um, yeah, which isn't burnt. It just goes to like a certain address which accumulates. But if you are to like, project out, which, it can be dangerous in crypto. But if you are to like go ahead and be like, all right, how's Hyperliquid going to grow from here?
Yeah.
With regulations like improving, in the US, like there's a world where you could see Hyperliquid having like various tokenized commodities or tokenized assets, like all on the actual like Hyperliquid, order book and chain itself. Um, but then also the counter to that is with increased regulatory clarity, you'll likely see Coinbase and Robinhood really aggressively enter that market of like tokenized assets and whatnot. But I still like can see a world where Hyperliquid's like revenue, just through supporting new asset types and also increasing like there's various like cryptocurrencies that they list on their spot order books, which currently like isn't really that many. I can see a world where that like fee revenue like continues to climb from here. But yeah, it's sort of like they've picked a lot of the low hanging fruit in terms of like getting the ecosystem going. It's just like super fascinating to see like such a like new, I guess it's like a renewed sense of like, I guess enthusiasm surrounding a new chain from the ground up, which we haven't seen in the space for like a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I think the culmination of the EVM, the token buybacks, and the BNB effect that you talked about, making their most loyal users rich, is like a pretty good recipe for this token being desirable. Um, do you feel like I'll sort of paint the picture with Solana. So Solana has Phantom, the wallet. It's
Mm.
very accessible in the App Store. You can kind of fund your wallet ready to go, and as soon as you enter into the wallet, like me, you just lose money straight away. Do you think that
Same here,
hype?
Swiss. Same here.
Do you think that hype needs one of those in the sense that it needs to kind of compete to get more, I don't want to say retail users, but users that are more accessible to its EVM chain to succeed long term?
I think long term, yes. My gut feel is like, yeah, it does need to. It will need to get to a point where it really needs to start expanding and targeting that average retail market. I think that's a conversation like well, not maybe well beyond, but definitely beyond this year,
Yeah,
maybe 2026, 2027. So like for the point of like, my investment outlook on hype, that's a non-factor and something I haven't really considered. Like again, wanting to be 100% out of this hype position probably within the next 6 months.
yeah,
But certainly if we're talking about the medium to long-term success, like prospects of Hyperliquid, if it ends up just being for the big dogs and like the whales and institutional money, like sure, that's a massive market. But it would really, I think, just limit the upside, given especially when you think of like retail money tends to be a lot of like just uninformed capital that is very lucrative for things like market makers and whatnot. So like you get that flywheel as well if it's a prominent force in like the retail sort of among retail investors and speculators. Um, that sort of side of it will always be appealing. So yeah, not really many people have a way to easily access those order books from your phone and whatnot. So that's certainly the case now. But in a few years, you'd hope that it gets to that point.
yeah. No, I kind of see that as well. And for those listening, you can download the web app of Hyperliquid. So not only can you lose money through your Phantom wallet, you can easily lose money through perpetual trading through Hyperliquid as well. So
All different types. No matter
yeah.
what screen you're on, you can lose money.
Yeah. Um, I don't quite know the story behind the validator network for Hype, but do you think decentralization is a factor for success anymore in crypto, or do you believe that that is no longer a priority of what drives price appreciation or success.
Yeah, I no longer, I don't think it's sort of like, I think of it more like something like insurance. Like you just sort of don't realize it's there
Yeah.
until maybe there is like a really catastrophic event, which thankfully in crypto, like there really hasn't been one of these chains where there may have been in the past, but there's nothing that's really, that significant that stands out to me of like a really, a chain that had like, a single digit or double digit validators that cost people like an insane amount of money. I just think it's like, it goes without saying that it's just like an assumed thing in crypto. And I think what has changed over time is obviously like decentralization itself is, really lacks a industry sort of standardized definition. So like I think people's definition and what they're willing to accept in terms of what is and what is not decentralized, that's changed dramatically over the years now. And I think people have gotten softer on just like accepting something as decentralized because there hasn't been like a catastrophic event. People are now just willing to accept a few more like vectors of like centralization to creep in. And it's like hard to tell like in the moment, like if things are pushing, a bit too close back towards centralization without something catastrophic happening. So yeah, and it's in terms of hyperliquid, it's going to be a challenge again beyond this bull market, importantly, but it will be a challenge certainly, especially given their specialty in terms of like being a place to trade. That whole like latency component of like trading on a database that is like operated by nodes all around the world. Like as it transitions to something that is more like that, will the performance of the actual like trading and the amount of slippage or just other ways that you could like sort of get screwed by trading on hyperliquid as they do expand their validator set, will that be a challenge for them? Like you'd have to think it is, but again, it's sort of a factor beyond this bull market.
Yeah, I love that like framework of thinking. It's like that's not my problem.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
out of
yeah,
those bags.
100%. Like, yeah, yeah.
You
Whereas,
know,
like, when I got into the space, like, half the conversation every day was like just about, like criticizing, criticizing low validated accounts, and there was always back and forth, like on Bitcoin, and yeah, like, so now these days you barely hear a peep about criticisms of something being too centralized or not decentralized enough. So yeah, we hopefully nothing catastrophic happens, but yeah, I think it's definitely changed.
yeah. I also think the fact that I just remember this so clearly. Like in the previous cycle, um, BNB went up a lot,
Mm,
and
mm,
I was like trying to figure out what it was, and I must have gravitated towards the like the commentary around the fact that it was just Ethereum but less decentralized. And I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
that's not good for the ideals in the space. And then, I kind of charted it like obviously after the cycle and realized, oh wow, that actually like went up a heap, and that kind of
Yeah.
may not
Yeah.
have
The things
mattered
you
to
tell
someone who
yourself,
got it.
like, yeah.
And so yeah, I love that mentality of like, yeah, look, they could have problems in the future, but by that time I'll just have some popcorn. I'll just watch from the sidelines and just cheer them on. So hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully they can achieve it. I won't have any skin in that one anymore. But um, I did have in my notes here that are you still holding Solana now, or have you
Yeah.
kind of yeah, okay, yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's probably for me. I'm not 100% sure long term where Solana would be. But for you, what are you sort of looking forward to on the horizon for Solana that maybe I'm not seeing?
I certainly think the likely approval of a spot ETF in the US is, I think there's only two. I think Solana and XRP I think are the only two where an approval, like a would be approval by the SEC, like would actually be price sensitive, like to the upside. Like
Yeah,
I think there's like way too much expectation. Like the expectations are way too high on like, I think all other altcoins, if they did get a spot ETF, like would just like would just capitulate and like get no demand at all from the open market. But I do think if Solana in particular got a spot ETF with, and importantly, like with staking like capabilities, I think that would be like very like a very price sensitive event to the upside. And what's important here is like the order. Like if Solana is like an isolated, like if it gets an ETF approval by itself, like without bundled in with other like cryptocurrencies, I think that would again subconsciously just like order Solana and like help it sort of get some distance away from the market.
Yeah.
I understand that answer like is absolutely like is so far out of the weeds of like fundamentals, but again, it's like just what I've sort of learned over the years in crypto, for better or worse, like that this sort of stuff matters, which I hate, but it does. And I do think like there is a very strong likelihood that a Solana spot ETF is approved in the US. Like, you know, it could even be like within the next few months. I would be pretty surprised if we got to the end of the year and it wasn't approved. So again, the demand for that ETF, I don't really think it would be like nothing that's like that that impressive, but I just think the hype and excitement around it being approved will be like really, I guess, significant and meaningful. That's one factor, like why that's certainly not the only reason why I'm still holding it, of course. But this year I still, they are still having like certain upgrades that like Fire Dancer continues to get like slowly rolled out and gradually improved, and now there's another side project that's working on another sort of form of scaling that I did have down in my notes to read up on. It was actually when I was meant to be off my phone on holiday, but I did check in and saw that there was some development there. But I will admit though that, as I said earlier, Solana it's really taken a heavy blow since what I said earlier. Like the upside for it in terms of like easy, quick to understand catalysts. The spot ETF is like by far the main one, but there's nothing else that I can point to as like a really short and sharp answer, like why I'm still holding Sol. Partially it's just because I think Bitcoin will keep going up and Sol will be like one that continues to like just go up and an outsized return compared to Bitcoin.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, and it's hard to dismiss Sol for how well it's done, and how prominent it's been in the uptick of new participants coming into the market, even if they've gone on to.
Yeah, and like the FTX, like again, this inherently isn't like a reason why you would invest in it, but it's nice to have like the FTX unlocks now as no longer like a big spooky thing that is going to like be a massive like sell side pressure. Having that removed now is nice, but again, it still begs the question like, all right, well, what's the reason for buying it from these levels? That side of it has definitely taken a hit, but I'm still expecting USD wise at least it still gets back up towards and even through all-time highs this year. But it's like everything, it depends on what Bitcoin does.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever think the market will kind of not care what Bitcoin does? Then you'll kind of have, I guess, yeah,
If my hunch is no, at least for the foreseeable future. I can see a world where the asset class is big enough where that's not the case, but that won't be well into the future if that ever does happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
No,
would
that
be
makes
nice. It'd
sense.
make things more interesting for sure. But like every like bull case you make, or every bear case even you make, you always need to caveat it at the end. Unfortunately, like it annoys me, but like you always have to caveat it with it depends on what Bitcoin does.
Yeah. This is you may not have actually had this experience because you're a gun investor, but were you ever on the wrong side of a investment decision because you got it all right to you, but it was also wrong in terms of how it ended up coming to fruition? Does that make sense? Like you invested into something, you did all the background checks, and then the token just went down only, and you're kind of like, well, I don't know how I got to this position.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, there's things like even like Uniswap, just like investing in that, and even like knowing that like DeFi was in like such a massive multi-year bear trend,
Yeah.
and like even Maker actually was a good example. Like last year, I brought like MKR like around the middle of last year, just like this whole outlook at like really strong fundamentals, like revenue. There were plans for this like massive like rebrand, and like not just a rebrand, but it was also like all of these phases of how Sky was going to then launch its own chain into the future and expand into like AI and all of that. And it's just like then the rebrand was just like absolutely shit house. Like the rebrand was so poorly executed. And Maker as a protocol, like yeah, it really fell out of favor. And has still like really struggled even in recent weeks and months. Like even as Aave and Uniswap have done quite well, Sky and Maker have still sort of lagged behind. So no, there's many there's several examples where like I've thought something would happen, and it sort of has kept happening, but the market just didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And that's just that's what I sort of do love about crypto. Like as I said earlier, that the market just doesn't give a shit about you. I suppose that's true in all markets, but in crypto, like they really let you like know the lesson, like given like how quickly price action can move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least we know you're human,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. I was worried
Yeah,
for a
that's it. And
second.
like even just like meta, like new metas, like going on, like even like liquid staking, like that whole emergence of that in like 2022, 2023, and like even like buying like a certain project that was doing like Solana to Bitcoin, sort of bridging,
Yeah.
like just way like overthinking and getting way too much in the weeds of like a broader trend of liquid staking that was like it was so too many steps into the future that like the market just didn't give a shit and there was no demand for the token. So that was one of like several like failed investments in crypto. And what I always try to tell people is it's like maybe not as true now. It is still true, but definitely not as much as in the past. But that whole like adage of like, I still firmly believe altcoins are very much just like startup investing, like in terms of just like the risk return. Like you put out 10 altcoin investments of equal value and you hope that one or two of them are just like really, really good. And then you acknowledge that like 6 or 7 will be very likely go towards zero. And maybe one or two of them you more or less break even in. And like that's a fantastic result. But for a lot of people, that's just like they can't wrap their heads around that, and they end up just out of those 10 options, they therefore just put like all their money into like one or two of them. And if those two are the ones that just go towards zero, then they sort of just get pissed off and just like leave crypto forever, which is again just I guess it's all a human psychology or investor psychology thing. But yeah, there's a lot of failed investments I've had over the years for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I was getting worried for a second. I was the only bad trader on this call.
What? No way.
I also think too the way that you framed altcoin investing as like startup investing is actually like really good. It's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah, like you see it all the time, like how many startups like fail, like, and altcoins are exactly the same, except the only difference really is that I suppose their capital and their treasury just like tends to last a bit longer, but like it's clear by the third or fourth year that the chance of product market fit is like well and truly like the door is shut, and they just sort of survive and sort of like on for like these zombies for a few more years than an average startup. But it's really like much the same of trying to find product market fit, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. You mentioned that you believe that we're more than 70% of the way through the bull market.
Mm.
What trends are you usually looking at to define that sort of percentage?
Yeah, and this also comes back to like definition of bull market and bear market as well.
Yeah.
I normally I don't know. I don't even know if it's right or wrong, but I like to think of like the start of the bull market as like sort of the FTX lows.
Yeah, okay.
But other people would disagree and say like that's when Bitcoin was around 16,000 or 15,000,
Yeah,
and I sort of have that as the bull market sort of starting then. But other people would disagree and say, hey, no, it's more towards like when the ETFs got approved and all of that. But um, that's why I say like I definitely think we only got like 6 or even trickling into like 2026. And yeah, the factors are like what probably people listening, if you've gotten this far, you've probably heard these before, but I think for a reason, like it's just a reflection of where Bitcoin's at, like things like M2 money supply, even like interest rate, like not just interest rate forecasting, more importantly, like where is the Fed, like what's the Fed expecting to do with monetary policy, and is that getting more dovish or more hawkish? Also things like the Federal Reserve, like balance sheet, and what they're doing with things like quantitative tightening. Are they looking at ending that? Which they are still expected to be ending that multi-year program officially. It's looking like that'll happen. Like, well, there's no formal like word, but a lot of people are expecting that to end around the end of this year, maybe start of next year. So all of these like factors that ultimately like help investors become or are likely to push investors to become more like risk seeking, and go out on the risk curve. All of those factors are like extremely important in terms of my outlook of where I think this cycle sort of tops. Um, so yeah, a lot of that is driven, yes, by macro, but also like politically as well. Like,
yeah,
is the what's the Trump administration like focusing on at the moment, and what are they like expected? What have they said that they will be focusing on in the future? Like after all these tariff stuff, which everyone's focused on now, but I think what some market or a lot of the market is overlooking is like Trump and like Scott Bessent and stuff have said that after tariffs, like they're really focused on like doing like tax cuts and introducing like, well, not introducing, but like trying to really push for like deregulation, which
yeah,
should be like stimulatory for well the US economy and also globally and just for markets as well. So there are all these like really nice factors that are again just like nice tailwinds for crypto overall. And even as we're going through this short term, like it really sucks like in light of what's happened recently. And obviously markets are just like one very small thing, obviously the social side of it, like the things happening in the Middle East. That's really, I guess, is even maybe postponed people's like expectations of when this bull market really gets euphoric and really tops out.
yeah,
But I'm still, even sitting through like these red days that we've had recently, like I'm still like unfazed in the sense of like my confidence is like has not really changed at all. I'm still extremely confident that like Bitcoin like bursts through its all-time highs and goes much higher
yeah,
in the next like 6 to 9 months, and then altcoins will go up by a lot more than what Bitcoin does. But as I said earlier, a lot more about altcoin selection these days, and the highs won't be as high as previous cycles.
yeah. Which is not what I wanted to hear, really. I just wanted you to tell me that we have a full-blown 2021 alt season, but 4 times the magnitude. And you've just given me, well, you just need to be a bit more strategic about what you're investing in. Ugh, great. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
God, you've been around long enough, Swiss. I have to tell you the hard truth.
Yeah.
After we end this, we can I can just say what you want.
Yeah, easy man, easy man. Just let me know my ordinals will be okay. That's all. That's all I need to
Yeah, you
know.
just listen to that on repeat.
Yeah. Just sit in the corner and just wait for the wait
Yeah.
for it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Let me just check my notes here. I had this question in here because I thought you'd probably be the best person to answer this sort of question. But with researching and staying on top of trends, would you say you have learnt more about human psychology, human behavior, and like generally how retarded people are?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Like that's one of like I think the biggest benefits I've like that's one of the things I will always be grateful for crypto for. Like is just, showing me how retarded people are. Like, no. But no, like it's like it's just an accelerated market cycle, really.
Yeah.
Like and it's been a crash course in like human psychology. Like I feel like living and breathing crypto and like forever being on like crypto Twitter, like for an unhealthy amount of hours over the years. Like I've just, and NFTs in particular as well, like just the euphoria and the complete, like, yeah, down bad, like environment and how nasty people get, like in the worst of times. Yeah, researching crypto day in day out has taught me like so much about incentives, and just how far people are willing to go, like beyond their own values and whatnot, just to see the price go up.
Yeah.
So no, I always like love my time in crypto is like hopefully not just like as like really, yeah, really well financially, but like also just for teaching me a lot about how people think, and then in turn like how I think through like certain things, whether it's even to do with like crypto or markets, or whether it's just outside of that completely in other realms of life. Like crypto's definitely yeah, had a like impression on how I sort of just view people and just like view just life in general.
Yeah. I I agree to that 100%. Um, I didn't realize how much of a crash course this whole industry would be.
Nah, you wouldn't. Like, you wouldn't even. And I didn't. I didn't even like think of that at all as like a factor of
Yeah.
crypto. But like living and breathing it is like truly like nothing else, as they say, which is you just can't replicate that. Well, I don't know. It's hard to know not living through it. But if I did go through a career path like something like TradFi or anything like that, it's I just doubt you get that much like introspection, that much like variance in like behaviors and shit hitting the timeline and all of that happens like within like a 24-hour time span.
Yeah, and then all the jokes and memes that come with it as
Yeah,
well.
100%.
Just to fry the receptors if they weren't already
Oh yeah,
fried as well.
oh yeah.
Um, do you feel with the amount of energy that you give your research in crypto that you can see yourself leaving the crypto space behind you at some point in the future?
Yeah, I've thought about this over the years, and I keep coming back to, as I was saying earlier, like I still do have this really strong belief. Again, it might just be bag bias and whatnot, but I still firmly believe like crypto will be here for like many decades to come, and not just in like a very tiny capacity like it is now. Um, and for that reason, like yes, I will my research process, I suppose, and the speed with which like I sort of come to a decision, based on all my experience, like is a lot, I guess, a lot quicker now, just because it's I just understand like a lot of the what projects are trying to pitch, and what they're. I can just see through like what all the fluff and whatnot a lot better now. So
Yeah.
certainly, time spent researching and in the weeds is a lot less. But yeah, I still come back to this idea or this thought that I just struggle to see myself in any other industry. What would be the point of like invalidation, or what would be, yeah, the last straw? Yeah, it's hard to sort of see what that would be. I would like to think it's more of a feeling more than anything,
Mm,
where it just looks like very, I don't know, gloomy, or that all the different experiments and all the different like efforts to create protocols that like have aligned incentives and value accrues, and there's actual, I guess, benefit to these protocols existing. If all those experiments I feel like have been done and there's nothing that's come out of them, I feel like I would make the call to leave. But um, that certainly hasn't hit me yet. Definitely.
yeah. No, that's wholesome to hear. It's cool that you still have that sort of energy after all of the cycle highs and cycle lows, because I think,
Yeah.
like you said it before, a lot of people, like you could feel that people hated this space after
Oh
FTX.
yeah.
There
It was
was no,
embarrassing. Like it was
yeah,
embarrassing. Like saying like, yeah, that you're like even in crypto, because you just got these looks like of just like, oh, you poor thing. Like,
Yeah. It's like, oh, you
yeah, so
little
it's cool
coins.
seeing the
Yeah.
rebound, as you said, like, but
Yeah.
the ups and downs, like socially, of even just being in this space is one thing. But yeah, people's perception, as we said, is always changing, and they will continue to change. I'm sure of that.
Yeah. I was going to ask as well, actually, how have you gone with uh, managing that with like personal relationships? Because you've talked about having to explain pretty tough concepts to new people. You've talked about how like you can see their eyes glazing over and how you have to kind of meet them where they're at. Do you find yourself in situations in your personal life where people are asking you about crypto and or like you've had to go through periods of time where you're like emotionally really great because you're in like winning positions, like all your bags are green, and then vice versa when you're in like terrible positions and FTX happens. Like, how have you found managing, I guess, personal relationships with crypto?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. Yeah, I could approach that. I think the first thing that came to mind was, thankfully, like a lot of my friends, we don't really talk about work like that much at all, like how people's like jobs are going or anything,
Yeah,
which is really, like, it's really nice to like just have that outlet where we just hang out and like just talk shit and just talk about all other things, and it's just a nice space to go to when, regardless of like if shit's like gone really bad in crypto or vice versa. um I'll still get some questions about from time to time for sure, but like it's nice to like not always like having to feel like you're on and like feel like you're about to get a question about something random, which would be all consuming, I'm sure, if I had mates that were like also always like super deep in crypto. Like, I don't know how it's like a counterfactual. Like, I wouldn't really know what that feels like, but it's nice having that outlet of like just normies who don't really ask me that much about crypto. Um, but certainly like how it's affected my overall like mood and like just, my whole like even mental health and all that, and like physical health and well-being, like regardless. I've certainly I've felt like in bull markets, in a weird way, you almost get like into more unhealthy habits, and in bear markets, in a weird way, you actually have more time for things like just like physical exercise and things like that. But
yeah,
in bull markets, you're always thinking about the opportunity costs of like, hey,
yeah,
what if I just scroll the feed for like a few more minutes or a few more hours? Like, I might come into this like information that I could like act upon. That was especially true in like meme coin season last year,
yeah,
and even in NFTs, like the cycle prior to that. And that's where like it definitely can take a toll. Like, at some point, it hits you with just like really poor sleep and like just really cloudy mental health. Like, if you're doing that like week in, week out, it takes a toll. So yeah, in a weird way, bull markets are like more of a struggle to like stay fully healthy and have a good relationships and things like that. But yeah, I think it really depends on like what your friendship group's like, and if they're in crypto or if they're not in crypto, I think is a big factor.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that as well. I think it's quite funny that like you do really develop some unhealthy habits in bull markets. Like
Yeah.
screen time is up significantly. You just eat whatever you can whenever you can, and then in bear markets you just decide to get your life together.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like it's such a stereotype, but like for a reason. It's like it's so true. Like, yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's coming up on 2 hours and 15 minutes that we've had some time together. I'm pretty well out of questions, except for one more. But before I finish off with this question, was there anything that you wanted to talk about as maybe like a reflection to yourself, or anything that you're really interested in at the moment? Yeah, the floor is yours.
yeah. Just as a vacuum, the cleaner just goes by with the vacuum. Just get to that. Gave it late. We're burning the midnight oil almost here, Swiss,
Yeah.
in our respective offices. But no, I want to know personally what's going on with the Brotato Capital podcast cadence.
The,
I'm all out of whack.
the cadence. Yeah, look, Do you know what it is? 1L is the guy that does all the magic pre and during the show. And so he recently went on holiday for a month and we couldn't run a show without him. And, schedules didn't align. And then when we came back, we finally did one I think it was Sunday night, actually. No, Saturday? Saturday night. We did one Saturday night. And
Nice.
yeah, it was good to see all the boys and have a chat, but I reckon I could only manage to stay on for 1 hour and then I had to go to bed at like 9 p.m. I was like too cooked. So whether it's the bull market or life, it is slowly getting the best of all of us. And so we've definitely dropped off our cadence. But yeah, we definitely have to pick it up. But maybe we'll get more energy when we have surges in prices and we can get, all excited
Oh
again.
yeah, yeah. That goes without saying. I think. It's good to hear you. You did one. I didn't know. That had gone up. I'll have to give it a listen. But certainly with prices, and I think just podcast information or content in general has certainly when we were trading sideways last year, and even like up to midway through this year, like the amount of like topics to discuss has certainly been a tough and like scarce selection at times. So if you were going to take a break, I think it was a good time to do it.
Yeah. And it's like there's only so many things you can really talk about.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, markets are sideways again. BTC dominance
Yeah.
is up. Yeah, that's
Jerome Powell may be saying something,
I
or he
think
may not.
Trump's getting in, right? He should be able to add some value
Yeah.
there, right? It's like
See you next week, fellas.
yeah.
We'll
Pretty
talk about
much.
it again.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
man. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Nah. That was it for me. Otherwise, I'll hit the road. Actually, I remembered I cycled in today, so I'll get my
Oh, dude.
my little light out, my little headlight, and pedal home.
At least you're getting your fitness in, which is a good thing. But also, riding home at like 8 p.m. is tough. So I apologize for keeping you so late and taking up all this time of yours.
Oh no, it's been really good, especially talking with someone who's been on the ins and outs of the market for so long as well, and a fellow Melbourner. Always
Fellow,
a pleasure.
yeah, I got too many Sydney guests. Need to change it up to Melbourne guests a little bit more. But
Yeah.
no, Matt, it was a pleasure having you on, and to everyone listening, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you got some value out of it. The links to Matty's socials will be down there. He's also got Collective Shift as well, which you can check out. The links will be in the bio. So thank you very much for taking the time to hang out with me, Matty, and ask all these questions. And yeah, we'll have to get you on the Brotato Capital podcast. And then we'll have to get you back on in 2049 when we can discuss Ethereum's rise to global reserve currency status.
Lovely. Thanks, Swiss. I'll just put that in the calendar right now.
If we don't have World War III, of course. Fingers crossed.
Let's hope so.